addition to these top 3, there are a few more. First, there is an auditory processing disorder. This is actually very similar to dyslexia, and they very commonly come together. Where dyslexia is defined more as the difficulty in processing and decoding words, auditory processing disorder is more about difficulty in processing sounds. So they might have more difficulty in the auditory discrimination area. They may have more difficulty when there is background noise. Like dyslexia, it can affect the way they speak, read, and spell. The difference between auditory processing disorder and dyslexia is a fine line and widely disputed. Then, there are language processing disorders. These are really just a subset of auditory processing disorder. And again, very related to dyslexia. Next, there are the nonverbal learning disabilities. This is a difficulty in picking up on social cues and may also involve coordination difficulties. These will cause social problems. Kids with this disorder may have a difficult time making friends, or may be nervous in social situations because they are just not understanding the finer social cues. This can be caused by a weakness in the cognitive microskill called visual discrimination. They are just not seeing these cues because of a weakness in visual discrimination. Also worth mentioning is executive function disorder, which affects strategizing, impulse control, and emotional and behavioral regulation. This, of course, could be related to any of the previously mentioned problems. There is a link to an executive function screener in the description. Then, there are the visual motor disabilities. This can be poor eye-hand coordination, trouble following the line when reading, things like that. But I bet you are already guessing that these are related to dyslexia and dysgraphia. So I wouldn't get too hung up on this, as it really falls back under these categories. It seems like there is just so much controversy about what is what, that all of these different categories get created. It gets confusing, right? Try not to let it. It all goes back to those cognitive micro skills anyway. And if you work on one of those cognitive micro skills, you should work on all, because they all work together. And even more importantly, because working on them together tells the brain to generalize the skill. That way, the new skill can be used in many different ways. Deep analysis and diagnosis of the exact weakness is not helpful here. And usually, it's counterproductive. So just get a general idea and then work them all. Let the amazing brain sort it out. It's very common for someone to have more than one of these problems. As a matter of fact, a majority do. That's because they are all caused by one or more weaknesses in the fundamental building blocks of learning, what we call cognitive micro skills. There are 3 categories of these micro skills: auditory, visual, and kinesthetic, and they can come in many different combinations. That's why there is so much variety in how a learning disability affects a person. But each of these micro skills can be strengthened. So, to help your child with any of these issues, work on the micro skills. If you want to find out more about any of these SLDs and understand them better, we've got you covered. We've made easy to understand videos covering each. You can find them somewhere up here. Or in the description. Thanks for watching.
Next part, link from yesterday's part 1 of the report for learning disabilities. Next part, this. This is Sam Vaughn for Sam's Sports Report, June 20th, 2024. The next is Dyscalculia. As we said, I would be wrong to give my sense about this disability a whole lot. I will give a brief definition. It may be like mixing numbers like 9 and 6, just like dysgraphia, mixing up John or B's and D's, or spelling John J-H-O-N, or from into form F-O-R-M instead of F-R-O-M. What is disability of dyscalculia? It affects a person's ability to do number-based information in math. Auto processing is their way to recall what we communicate and have a hard time with what is how match the definition of auditory disorder, APD. This affects 3%, 5% school-age children. Kids with this condition, also known as central auto processing, CPAD, cannot understand what they hear in the same way as other kids. Is because their ears and brains don't fully coordinate. It has nothing to do with being deaf or anything like that. And background noise is tough, even for me now more than ever with a mental health disorder. Banging things like hanging a picture and hammering it in, the hammering sound really bothers me. LVD, a difficulty time making social situations. Executive functioning. Symptom that happens and conditions disrupt the brain's ability to control through emotions. Behaviors, it's common with ADHD, but can also happen due to brain damage and
degenerative
brain disease, depending on how, why, what happens, and treatable psychotherapy depending. Visual motor processing disorder can issue with the way the brain processing information. There are many different types of processing disorders and many different, which can include trouble drawing or copying, inability to detect defense, different shapes, letters reversible. Visual processing disorder, VBDT, is a student dialogue with language. Also many definitions who struggle with motor skills. Thing may be difficult to task because the way it may require specific understandings, such as this mop that I show right here. You just need to understand it, and I have a hard time understanding how to put the mop here and latch it over the latch and then tie it all up, and the map falls occasionally at work. Attentionally, the ability to keep focusing on current tasks, processing speed, the rate of the brain of the information, short-term memory, the ability to retain information in short periods, long-term memory, the ability to store information for later use, logical reasoning, the ability. As news breaks about the stadiums and now to sports. As news breaks about the stadiums in Kansas City, it keeps on breaking. Kansas has came in and looked like they're going to maybe swoop the Royals and maybe even sweep the Chiefs. They have just passed a new star bond, and that is going to set an effect. And Laura Kelly seeming like she's going to sign it. The governor of Kansas. And the Chiefs look in. The Royals look in. Could the Missouri lose another two teams, and there are only two teams be left in St. Louis? Also to add, you go to St. Louis, and you look at St. Louis, and it seems like a town that's dying without a football team. So if that sends any more messages clearly to Missouri, I don't know what does. We need to pass this bill, at least keep the Kansas City Chiefs and Royals and in this town, meaning Kansas or Missouri. You don't want them going to Nashville, because you will see the economy lose people and lose a bunch of people. If you don't care about that, then you don't care about the Kansas City economy. Oratize and plan and language-based ability, the ability to recognize words and ability to understand written, spoken math processing, the ability to numbers and symbols, and the ability to understand and calculate simple math. All these can help with accommodations. And conversation between Kansas and Royals are the first ones. The Royals are the first ones to step to the plate. As conversations continue to ramp up over future home for the Royals, on one architecture firm produces a visit of the ballpark, but in Kansas, architecture unrevealed, a trip rendering showcased the concepts of Royal Stadium in the West Bottoms that straddles border show me in the Sunflower State. The Royals told KCTV5 moving that team has no involvement with the renderings. Here's that from KCTV5.
Mentions at the current Kauffman Stadium,
and adds an outfield district with bars, restaurants, and more. But probably its most interesting feature, the stadium designed to allow home runs to be hit out of the state and into the other. Now, the renderings come just days after Kansas lawmakers passed a bill to create special star bonds to lure the Chiefs and Royals